Okay, let's dive in. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at some really practical source material. It's all about helping you express your opinions confidently, naturally in English.
Right. It tackles something a lot of learners run into. They know the grammar, they've got the words, but actually sharing their own thoughts or just reacting, they feel a bit stuck.
Yeah, stuck just saying I think or I agree over and over.
Exactly. Which, I mean, it works, but it can sound a bit flat, maybe not quite capture the nuance they intend.
Totally. And those basic phrases, they're fine, sure. But the source we're digging into today, it really stresses that real conversations, chatting with friends, debating something, even in work meetings, they're way more dynamic.
It's about showing how you feel, adding nuance, connecting with what the other person is saying in a, well, more fluid way.
Right. Less like reading from a script, more like actually talking. More like you.
Precisely. So the aim isn't just getting the grammar right, though, that's important, obviously, but really stepping into natural communication,
Yeah.
letting your personality, your perspective shine through.
So, our mission here for this deep dive is basically to unpack the source, break down its strategies, and give you a solid toolkit.
Yeah, the idea is that by the end, you'll have like a wider range of options for sharing what you think, for agreeing, disagreeing, doing it all more comfortably, more confidently in English.
We're focusing on four key areas the source lays out. First, how to give your opinion with more confidence, using more than just I think.
Second, how to agree with people naturally, politely, keeping the conversation flowing.
Third, and this is a big one, navigating disagreements respectfully, because that can feel really tricky, right?
Oh, definitely. And fourth, adding that bit of personality, making your opinions sound more engaging, more like how a native speaker might actually phrase things.
It's about having choices, knowing you can pick the right phrase for the moment.
Exactly, giving you that flexibility.
Think of it like, I don't know, upgrading your conversational software. So let's kick off with that first area. Giving your opinion confidently, moving beyond just, I think.
Right. And the source makes a good point, I think, is, okay, it's always correct, but if that's all you use, your speech can sound a bit, well, repetitive, maybe less fluent.
Using different phrases just adds variety, shows you have a better handle on the language.
It's like having different ways to say the same core idea, but each way adds a slightly different flavor or emphasis.
Yeah, like different camera lenses, I think is your standard kit lens. Works fine. But sometimes you need that wide angle view or maybe something sharper to focus on one specific thing. These phrases are like those extra lenses for your thoughts.
And the source gives us some good ones, in my opinion. Personally, I believe P, from my perspective.
I'd say that. P, as far as I'm concerned. Oh? Each one frames it slightly differently. Okay, let's break these down one by one. Really see them in action with lots of examples. That's where the real value is, I think. First up, in my opinion.
The source is one example.
That's a solid example, in my opinion, is probably the most direct swap for I think.
Yeah.
It clearly flags what follows as your viewpoint.
Works in formal settings, informal settings, pretty much anywhere you want to clearly state your judgment or belief, right?
Definitely. That's very clear. Let's think of some more examples. Say you're discussing climate action.
Okay. You could say, in my opinion, investing in renewable energy is absolutely crucial for tackling climate change.
Or maybe local issues. In my opinion, our town needs more green spaces for people to relax.
What about technology trends? In my opinion, artificial intelligence will radically change almost every industry within the next decade.
Or comparing transport options. In my opinion, taking the train is often less stressful than driving, especially during rush hour.
See? Just slots right in. Clearly marks it as your take on things. Straightforward.
Very straightforward. Now, the source also lists personally, I believe.
Yeah.
Adding that personally, it changes the feel, doesn't it?
It really does. Personally puts the focus right on you. It suggests this isn't just a casual thought, it's your individual conviction, maybe something you feel quite strongly about.
And I believe often sounds a bit stronger than I think, too. Like more conviction behind it.
Yeah, I think can be a bit tentative sometimes. I believe feels more settled, more deeply held. The source example shows this. Personally, I believe remote work is fantastic because it gives people more flexibility. You can almost hear the strong feeling there.
You really can. It sounds like they've weighed it up, maybe experienced it, and formed a strong view. Okay, let's generate some more. What about personal development?
Good one. Personally, I believe making time for reflection each day is key to personal growth. That sounds like a core principle, doesn't it?
It does. Or education. Personally, I believe learning how to learn is more important than memorizing specific facts. Sounds like a strong stance on educational philosophy.
How about something like city living versus country living? Personally, I believe the energy and diversity of city life outweigh the peace and quiet of the countryside, for me at least.
Right, that, for me at least, reinforces the personal aspect, or even food preferences.
Hmm.
Personally, I believe starting the day with a healthy breakfast makes a huge difference to my energy levels.
It really emphasizes that individual experience or value. It's great when you want to stress that this is your take, maybe even if others disagree. Like, personally, I believe podcasts are a much better way to learn than watching videos. You're owning that preference.
So yeah, personally, I believe great for those strong individual convictions.
Yeah.
Now, the source also suggests, from my perspective, that feels different again.
It does. From my perspective, is perfect for acknowledging that your view is just one way of looking at things. It kind of says, hey, this is how I see it based on where I'm standing or what I know. But yeah, other views exist.
It's less about stating a universal truth and more about offering your angle. Like, this is the view from my window. The source didn't give a specific example here, so let's play with it. Imagine discussing a difficult team project.
Okay. You could say, from my perspective, the communication breakdown started when the project scope changed unexpectedly. You're pinpointing the issue based on your observation point within the team.
Or talking about a book or film adaptation. From my perspective, the movie didn't quite capture the complexity of the main character's internal struggle like the book did. That's your interpretation as a viewer who read the book.
How about a societal issue, like the impact of social media? From my perspective, the biggest downside isn't addiction, but the erosion of nuanced conversation. You're highlighting the aspect you see as most critical.
Or even something practical, like organizing an event. From my perspective, starting the planning phase earlier would have prevented a lot of last-minute stress. Your view based on hindsight or experience.
So, from my perspective, is really useful when you want to be clear that this is your angle, especially if the topic is complex or subjective, and you want to implicitly invite other perspectives too.
Nicely put. Okay, next up from the source. I'd say that. This one sounds super common, very natural in everyday speech.
It really is. I'd say that feels a bit less formal, maybe a touch softer than, in my opinion, or I believe. It's like you're casually offering your observation or assessment.
Yeah, it doesn't carry that heavy weight of deep conviction. Makes it perfect for lighter topics or when you just want to state your view without being too forceful. The source actually uses this later in the pizza example, but let's make some pure examples now.
Okay. Talking about travel plans, I'd say that leaving on Friday morning is probably our best bet to avoid traffic. It's a suggestion, offered casually.
Or giving feedback on a presentation draft. I'd say that the introduction is really strong, but maybe the conclusion could be a bit punchier. It's a gentle assessment.
How about recommending something? I'd say that if you like historical fiction, you'll probably really enjoy this author, offering a suggestion based on comparison.
Or just making an observation about someone's work. I'd say that she's made remarkable progress in just a few months. A straightforward, positive assessment.
I'd say that is just incredibly versatile. Fits almost anywhere you're sharing a thought or assessment in a normal, conversational way. Sounds very natural.
Definitely. Okay, the last one in this group from the source. As far as I'm concerned, this one has a slightly different flavor.
It does. As far as I'm concerned, often signals that you're stating your opinion based on what matters to you, specifically, or within a scope you define. It can sometimes subtly imply others might care about other things, but this is what's relevant from my viewpoint.
Yeah, it can feel like you're setting a boundary around your concern. This is my take on this specific aspect, or this is what matters to me. The source example about remote work captures this. As far as I'm concerned, it's a great option, but it depends on the person's job and lifestyle.
That but is doing important work there. It qualifies it. For me, it's good, but I recognize it's not universal. You're stating your view while acknowledging limitations or other factors. Let's try some more. Talking about team priorities.
Okay, as far as I'm concerned, meeting the client's deadline is the absolute top priority right now. You're stating your priority, what you think the focus should be.
Or discussing a movie genre. As far as I'm concerned, a good thriller needs suspense more than big action scenes. You're defining what you value in that specific genre.
How about personal preferences in learning? As far as I'm concerned, interactive exercises are much more helpful than just reading theory, highlighting what works for you, or evaluating a proposal. There are lots of details, but as far as I'm concerned, the key question is whether it's financially viable. You're cutting through to what you see as the core issue.
So, as far as I'm concerned, is great for zoning in on your personal priority, your specific take on an aspect, or defining the scope of your opinion.
So just to recap those, in my opinion, direct, clear. Personally, I believe stronger individual conviction. From my perspective, one angle acknowledges others. I'd say that natural, casual assessment. And as far as I'm concerned, focused on personal relevance or priority.
Having these in your back pocket is huge. You're not just repeating, I think. You're adding these subtle layers, this nuance. You sound more precise, more intentional.
Exactly. More sophisticated. Which boosts confidence, makes you sound more fluent. It takes a little effort to consciously choose them at first, maybe.
Sure, breaking the habit, but it pays off. Okay, so that's sharing your opinion. Now, the source moves into responding to others. Specifically, how to agree naturally.
Ah, yes, the back and forth of conversation. Because it's not just about broadcasting your views, right? It's about reacting. And the source notes that just saying, I agree, can sometimes feel a bit abrupt.
Yeah, like a full stop. It's correct, but doesn't always invite more conversation or show real engagement.
Whereas natural agreement often involves showing how much you agree, or validating their point, maybe adding a little something extra.
And the source gives us some really good phrases for this, for agreeing in a more engaging way.
Phrases like, I completely agree with you.
Yeah,
That's a
great
great
point.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And exactly, that's what I was thinking.
Let's take I completely agree with you. Simple, but that completely adds emphasis. Full agreement. 100%.
Leaves no doubt. Now, the source cleverly pairs agreement phrases with adding a bit more detail. Remember the exercise example. Someone says, exercise is good for mental health.
Right, and the response isn't just, you're absolutely right. It's, you're absolutely right. Exercise helps reduce stress and keeps you energized.
That's the key. You agree, you validate, and you build on it slightly. Keeps the conversation moving. Let's try this with the other phrases.
Okay, using I completely agree with you. Someone says, this coffee shop has the best atmosphere.
You could say, oh, I completely agree with you. It's so cozy and the music is always perfect. You echo atmosphere with specific details.
Or if they say, learning to cook is a really valuable life skill.
I completely agree with you. Knowing how to feed yourself well is fundamental. You add a supporting reason.
Okay, next. That's a great point. The source used this too. That's a great point. I always feel better after a workout. It specifically praises their contribution.
It validates their insight. So if someone observes, I think taking short breaks during the workday actually increases productivity.
You could respond, that's a great point. Stepping away for even 5 minutes helps me refocus completely. You agree and share your personal experience backing it up.
Or if they say, the way they organized the event timeline was very efficient.
That's a great point. Everything ran so smoothly because of that clear schedule. You agree and highlight the positive outcome.
Now for the really strong one. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, this means maximum agreement, right? Like it's impossible to agree any harder.
Exactly. Perfect for when you feel totally aligned. If someone says, public libraries are such an amazing, underrated resource.
You could jump in with, oh, I couldn't agree more. Free access to books, information, community programs, they're incredible. You show strong agreement and list benefits.
Or a complaint, this traffic is absolutely unbearable today.
Ugh, I couldn't agree more. We've barely moved in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Sharing the frustration validates their feeling.
Okay, then you're absolutely right. And exactly, that's what I was thinking. We saw you're absolutely right in the exercise example. It confirms their correctness.
Yeah, very validating. And exactly, it's just that quick, sharp agreement, adding, that's what I was thinking, shows you were on the same wavelength.
So if someone says, the ending of that movie felt really rushed.
You could say, you're absolutely right. They tried to wrap up too many plot points in the last 10 minutes. You agree and specify why it felt rushed?
Or if a colleague suggests, maybe we should present the data visually with charts instead of just text.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. It'll make the key trends so much clearer, shows alignment, and supports the idea.
These phrases are just so much richer than a simple, I agree. They show degrees of agreement, they validate the other person, and they often keep the conversation flowing by adding that little bit extra.
Right. Makes your agreement feel like an active part of the dialogue, not just a passive nod. Builds rapport.
Totally. Okay, but conversations aren't always agreeable, are they?
Definitely not. Disagreements happen, and they can be really productive, actually, for exploring ideas. The source really focuses on how to disagree politely.
Which is crucial. Because just blurting out, I disagree or you're wrong, can feel really confrontational. It can shut things down fast.
Yeah, it puts people on the defensive. So the source offers phrases that soften it. And the key strategy seems to be acknowledging their point first.
That structure is everything. Show you heard them, show you understood them before you offer your different take. It just lands so much better.
So the phrases from the source are things like, I see your point, but. I get what you're saying, but I feel differently. That's an interesting perspective, but I think. Hi, I respect your opinion, but I have a different view. And I get where you're coming from, but I see it differently.
Let's unpack I see your point, but. Single structure, acknowledge, then pivot with but. The source used the social media example. I see your point about it being bad, but I think social media has some benefits too.
Right. You grasp their concern, then offer a counter-argument or a different aspect. Much softer. Let's try it. Someone argues, working from home permanently kills company culture.
Okay. You could say, I see your point about maintaining culture being a challenge, but I think with intentional effort, strong virtual culture is definitely possible. Acknowledge the challenge, but counter the kills idea.
Or about a restaurant review. I see your point that the service was slow, but I think the amazing quality of the food made up for it. Concede one negative, but counter with a positive.
How about a policy decision? I see your point that this policy aims to increase efficiency, but I think it might overlook the impact on individual creativity. Acknowledge the goal, raise a potential downside.
Okay, next. I get what you're saying, but I feel differently. Similar, but I get what you're saying often feels like you understand their reasoning, and I feel differently flags it as more of a personal assessment or feeling.
Yeah, good for subjective things maybe. The source example was quite general. Let's make one up. Someone says, I think action movies are just mindless entertainment.
You could say, I get what you're saying, some definitely are, but I feel differently. I think the best ones can have compelling stories and amazing choreography. You understand their general point, but offer a counter based on your feeling about the genre's potential.
Or about a management style.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying about needing clear direction, but I feel differently. I think empowering team members to make their own decisions leads to better results. Understand their logic, clear direction, but propose a different feeling-based approach, empowerment.
Okay. How about, that's an interesting perspective, but I think.
This one's very polite. Calling someone's view interesting is a nice way to validate it, especially if it's maybe unusual or something you strongly disagree with, but you want to be diplomatic.
It credits them for offering a viewpoint worth thinking about, even if you don't end up agreeing. The source example was again about social media. That's an interesting perspective that it's bad, but I actually think it depends on how people use it. Calls it interesting, then offers a more nuanced view.
Let's try another. If someone claims classical music is boring.
You could respond, that's an interesting perspective, but I think there's such a huge range within classical music. Some pieces are incredibly passionate and exciting. Acknowledge their take, then broaden the definition.
Or discussing art. That's an interesting perspective, that the painting seems chaotic, but I think the artist is deliberately using that chaos to convey a sense of urban energy. Validate their impression, chaotic, offer your interpretation.
Okay, then there's, I respect your opinion, but I have a different view. This one feels good for potentially sensitive topics, explicitly states respect.
Exactly. It clearly separates respecting the person and their right to an opinion from disagreeing with the opinion itself. The source example was basic. Let's add context, maybe a discussion about parenting styles.
I respect your opinion on that approach, but I have a different view based on what's worked for my family. Honors their view, grounds yours in personal experience.
Or about career choices. I respect your opinion that stability is the most important factor, but I have a different view. I prioritize finding work that feels meaningful. Acknowledges their value, stability, states your different value, meaning.
And the last one. I get where you're coming from, but I see it differently. Very similar to, I get what you're saying, but where you're coming from often implies understanding the background or motivation behind their view.
Yeah, like you see the steps that led them to that conclusion. If someone is defending a decision you disagree with, okay, I get where you're coming from, you're under pressure to deliver quickly, but I see it differently. I think taking an extra day to double check would have saved us problems later. Acknowledge their motivation, pressure, offer a different judgment.
Or about lifestyle choices. I get where you're coming from wanting the security of owning a home, but I see it differently. I prefer the flexibility that renting gives me right now. Understand their desire, security. State your preference, flexibility.
These polite disagreement tools are just so important. They let you share your honest view, challenge ideas, explore things properly, all without making it personal or confrontational.
Yeah, it turns potential arguments into actual discussions. You acknowledge first, then contribute your perspective. Keeps the respect intact.
Exactly. Okay, so we've got giving opinions, agreeing, disagreeing. The final piece from the source is about making your opinion sound more engaging, adding some flair.
Yeah, exactly. Moving beyond just technically correct sentences to sound more alive, more like a real person talking. The source highlights two main ways: using natural introductory expressions and adding emotion or humor.
Let's look at those introductory expressions first, the source list. Honestly, I think. No, to be fair, I'd say.
Yay.
And if you ask me,
Honestly, I think that is a touch of sincerity, right? Like you're giving your straight, unfiltered opinion.
yeah, maybe even a little vulnerability sometimes. The source example feels like that. Honestly, I think learning English is one of the best investments in yourself. Sounds genuine, heartfelt.
Let's try it elsewhere. Maybe someone asked for feedback on their work. Honestly, I think the core idea is brilliant, but the execution needs a bit more polish. Sounds frank, but constructive.
Or expressing a worry. Honestly, I think we might be trying to do too much in too little time with this plan. Sounds like a genuine concern being voiced.
Or even just a simple preference. Honestly, I think rainy days are perfect for reading a book. Makes the preference feel more authentic.
So, honestly, I think adds that personal, sincere touch. Now, to be fair, I'd say this one's about balance, right?
Yeah, it introduces a point that maybe balances out something negative just said, or acknowledges complexity, like you're stepping back to give a fair assessment. The source didn't have a specific example, so let's make some.
Okay. Say someone's complaining about a difficult colleague.
You could say, yeah, he can be challenging to work with sometimes, but to be fair, I'd say his technical skills are absolutely top-notch. Acknowledges the negative, balances with a positive.
Or discussing a project that went over budget. It definitely cost more than we expected, but to be fair, I'd say the final result is much higher quality than we initially planned for. Balances cost with quality.
How about a restaurant that was okay, but not amazing? The main course was a bit disappointing, but to be fair, I'd say the appetizers were fantastic. Balances the different parts of the meal.
To be fair, I'd say. Shows you're thinking critically, see multiple sides, adds nuance.
Okay, and the last intro phrase. If you ask me, this one feels pretty informal.
Totally. It's like saying, well, here's my personal take, often casually, maybe even if you weren't explicitly asked.
Like offering your 2 cents. The source example is classic. If you ask me, coffee is better than tea any day. Just a simple, casual preference.
Let's try more. Giving advice on traffic. If you ask me, taking the back roads is usually faster during peak hours. Casual suggestion.
Or commenting on a movie. If you ask me, the sequel wasn't nearly as good as the original. Just offering your casual critique.
How about a problem at work? If you ask me, the real issue isn't the software, it's the lack of training. Offering your diagnosis informally.
If you ask me, slides your opinion into conversation really easily, keeps it light.
These little intros, honestly, to be fair, if you ask me, they seem small, but they really smooth the way for your opinion and add that layer of conversational flavor.
Totally agree. And then the second part of adding engagement, according to the source, injecting emotion or humor, this is where you can really let your personality come through.
Yes. And the source examples are fantastic here. Really memorable.
That first one about pizza. Brilliant. I'd say pineapple on pizza is a crime, but that's just me.
It's perfect. Uses, I'd say, casual intro, then this huge exaggeration, a crime, that's the humor, and then softens it with, but that's just me. Makes it funny, relatable, not aggressive.
It immediately shows personality. You get a sense of the speaker. Let's try that style. Talking about early mornings.
Honestly, I think my brain doesn't actually turn on before 9 a.m. It's just running on autopilot. Exaggeration for humorous effect.
Or assembling flat pack furniture. If you ask me, those instructions are written in some kind of alien code designed to cause maximum frustration. Hyperbole again.
The other source example used comparison for emotion. Honestly, I'd rather wake up at 5 a.m. than sit in traffic for 2 hours.
Yeah, that really lands. You instantly understand how much they hate traffic because the comparison point, waking up at 5 a.m., is something most people find unpleasant.
It conveys the intensity of feeling really effectively. Let's try that structure, complaining about meetings.
Personally, I believe I'd rather listen to dial-up internet sounds for an hour than sit through another meeting that could have been an email. exaggerated comparison to show strong dislike.
Or about doing taxes. To be fair, I'd say I find untangling a massive knot of Christmas lights slightly less painful than sorting out my tax receipts. Humorous comparison to express difficulty and annoyance.
These examples show that making opinions engaging isn't just about logic. It's about feeling, personality. Using humor, exaggeration, relatable comparisons, it makes you memorable.
It shows how you feel, not just what you think. And that's what connects with people. It adds that human touch that makes your English sound authentic.
It might take a bit more confidence to do this, maybe, to inject humor.
Maybe, initially, yeah. But starting small, maybe with lighthearted topics like the pizza example, is a great way in. It really pays off in making you sound natural.
And that really wraps up our deep dive into the source materials strategies. We've gone from giving opinions beyond "I think" to agreeing naturally, disagreeing politely, and finally adding that engaging personality.
Yeah, it's a really comprehensive set of tools. Moving beyond those basic phrases opens up so much more potential for clear, confident, and authentic communication.
So the big takeaways, definitely try out those alternatives to, I think, like, in my opinion, personally, I believe, from my perspective, I'd say, as far as I'm concerned, find ones that feel right for you.
When you agree, aim higher than just "I agree." Use things like "You're absolutely right, I couldn't agree more, that's a great point," and try to add a little something extra to keep the flow going.
Disagreement. Remember the golden rule. Acknowledge first. I see your point, but that's interesting, but I think. I respect your opinion, but politeness first.
And finally, layer on that engagement. Use intro phrases like "honestly," "to be fair," if you ask me. And don't shy away from a bit of humor or emotion. Think pizza crimes and 5 a.m. wake-up calls.
Using these techniques, as the source suggests, will genuinely help you sound more fluent, more confident, and just more natural when you speak English, finding your voice.
Definitely. And speaking of finding your voice, the source includes a challenge task, something practical for you, the listener, to do, because knowing isn't the same as doing right.
Exactly. Practice is key. So the challenge is 3 steps. Step 1, find a chance to chat in English and express an opinion. Any topic, any situation. Could be online, with a friend, even just talking to yourself.
Step 2, in that conversation, consciously try to use at least one of the alternative opinion phrases we talked about. And if you can, try one for agreeing or disagreeing too. Bonus points for adding an engaging intro or a touch of personality.
And step 3, this is crucial. Reflect afterwards. How did it go? Did using the phrase feel okay? Did you sound more confident? What worked well? What could you maybe try next time?
That reflection piece is where the learning really sticks. It builds self-awareness. You start noticing what feels natural, what still feels a bit clunky. It guides your next practice session.
And don't aim for perfection straight away. It's about trying it out, experimenting. It will feel a bit conscious at first.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like you're deliberately picking words, but stick with it. The more you use these phrases, the more automatic they become. They just become part of how you speak.
The source also hinted at what could be next building on this with storytelling in English.
Makes sense, right? Storytelling is another huge part of natural, engaging communication. Sharing experiences, illustrating points. It connects with people differently than just stating opinions.
Yeah, being able to weave in a short story or anecdote to back up your point, that's a powerful skill. The source notes mention things like story structure, using past tenses, keeping listeners engaged.
It all fits together. Expressing yourself clearly, reacting to others, sharing experiences, it builds that complete picture of a confident, natural communicator.
So maybe something to look forward to. But for now, the focus is on putting today's tools into practice. Remember that core idea from the source. Your opinion matters. Learning how to articulate it effectively in English, agreeing, disagreeing, sharing perspective, it's about making sure your unique voice gets heard.
It really is empowering. It lets you participate more fully, share what you know, connect better with people.
So think about your conversations this week. Where could you use one of these phrases? How might you express that opinion a little differently, a little more confidently?
Because mastering these phrases isn't just about English grammar. It's about building your skills to interact effectively, to share your ideas constructively, to build relationships wherever you are.
It's a fundamental skill for connection and contribution.
So go on, take the challenge, try just one phrase, see how it feels.
Keep practicing, keep talking, and enjoy finding that confident, fluent voice in English. See you next time for the deep dive. Bye for now.